Hello and welcome back to Essay Writing in English, week 12. This is video 2, and for this video, I'm going to continue giving feedback on some of your writing from earlier in the semester. I've chosen some more sentences and some groups of sentences here to show you a few more things. I really enjoyed doing that last video, and I think it's useful so long as you watch it, number one, and really pay attention to what I'm saying and practice using what I tell you in your own writing. So I have picked a few more things. Let me share my screen. And I need to share this document, and we'll talk about, again, if some of these are your sentences, don't feel bad. Everyone makes mistakes, and the purpose is just to help you so that you can write better in the future, and so that you can improve. If no one shows you how to change things or how to do things better, then you'll never learn. So that is my goal here. And I picked this sentence here for a couple of reasons. One is just the wording is a little bit awkward. There's a better way to say this. And two, I want to focus on this idea of this this adverb well here. So first, let's see what we can do. And when we throw away the trash so we can recycle it, we have to do it well. Okay, so this was a paragraph about like saving the environment or conserving energy from I think unit 4 or week 4 rather. In this sentence, the focus is really on the recycling, the trash that you recycle. So instead of talking about when we throw away the trash so we can recycle it, we can just focus on not trash generally, but recyclables. Okay, so what we want to say here is, if you want, you can still keep the and when we put the couple, you can say throw, we'll say usually put out. When we put out the recycling, put out meaning you're taking it out of your house and putting it in the spot where the recycling stuff goes in your house or apartment. When we put out the recycling, so instead of saying we have to do it well, we should be careful to separate it. So we're separating the recycling, right? Because you separate plastic goes here, paper here, glass here. We call that separating the recycling. So when we put out the recycling, we should be careful to separate it, to not mix it all up. We want to keep things separate. Okay, and this thing about well, in Korean you use well a lot. 잘 못해, right? I can't do it well. Of course, we have the word well in English. You can see it here, but in English, the word well gets used far less than in Korean. So whenever you have a sentence in Korean where you use well and you're trying to write it in English, think about a different way to say it. For example, if I could say I play tennis well, that's a perfectly fine sentence. There's nothing wrong with it. It's natural even. I play tennis. Oh, he plays tennis very well. However, it's much more common for native speakers to say something like, I'm good at tennis, or I'm really good at tennis, rather than saying I play it well. In this case, well sounds a little bit formal compared to, oh, he's really good at tennis. And then in a case like this, we wouldn't use well at all here. We should be careful to separate it, right? We should take care to separate it. So just always be a little bit suspicious of using well when you make English sentences, because 9 times out of 10, there's probably another way to say it without using the word well. And there are lots of examples of that. Another big one is, and I'll write it here. If you don't know the answer to something, or you're not sure, in Korean you'll say 잘 몰라요, right? And when people translate that in English, they'll say like, I don't know well. But this is very awkward in English. We would never say something like this. There are 2 things you could say instead. You could say, I'm not sure, or I'm not really sure. Or you could say, I don't know exactly. Or I don't know for sure. Those are all more natural than saying, I don't know well. I don't know well sounds very strange in English. So that's just another example. Okay, number 2 here, this is another title. And we talked about how to fix titles in the previous video. So I'm gonna just, again, we need capital letters on important words. Of is a preposition. That is not an important enough word. Today is serving as an adjective here, today's generation. Now that one is good to go. Let me highlight that and embolden it. All right, recently people live more than 100 years. Recently. Okay, so for this one, the word recently here seems a little strange. More common way or easier way to do this would be to say these days. Or you could also say today, meaning now, or nowadays you could use too. Any of these would be fine. And then let me put a little, so any of those, any of those would work. These days, now, today, nowadays, etc. And then a better way to say this is, it is not uncommon for people to live more than years. There's lots of ways you could do this, but this is one example. These days, it's not uncommon for people to live more than 100 years. Or it is not uncommon. Let's do another one here. It is not uncommon for people to live. Oops. To live, to be, to live to 100, or to live to be 100. It's another way you could say that one. Okay, let's talk about the death of health problems. In this case, the writer is talking about health problems that can be deadly. So let's talk about, you could say deadly, using an adverb, or deadly health problems. Deadly health problems. So this is working as an adjective describing health problems. Deadly health problems. Or let's talk about, whoops, health problems that can be deadly. Or let's talk about health problems another way, that can lead to death. Any of these would be fine. Okay. Many people enjoy eating fast food, such as hamburgers and chicken, but it contains a lot of trans fat, salt, and sugar. Therefore, many people are exposed to. Okay, so first sentence here is totally fine. I'm going to keep that one. But what is it here? See, it is referring to fast food, which is fine, right? Fast food you're going to use it to refer to that. But it gets a little confusing because you have fast food, a non-countable thing here, but then you talk about hamburgers, which is countable, and then you have chicken. And so when you just say it, are you talking about chicken? Are you talking about hamburgers? Are you talking about fast food? It's a little bit confusing. So I think we need to be more specific in our pronoun here. So, but what contains? What are we talking about that contains a lot of trans fat, salt, and sugar? But you could say such food, or this kind of food. Yeah, but such food contains, or but this kind of food, but such food, but this kind of food contains a lot of that. Okay. Therefore, many people are exposed. So if you eat this kind of food, you have a chance of getting sick, right? Having high blood pressure or diabetes later. So exposed isn't the right word. Exposed means like you came into contact with something. So if your friend has corona and you were hanging out together, in that case, you could say, I was exposed to corona. Maybe you got it, maybe you didn't, but you were exposed because you were near your friend. So we don't want to use exposed here. Instead, we're going to say at risk of. Right? If you eat these things, you will be. Many people are at risk of getting high blood pressure and diabetes. At risk of. So I'm going to hold those two sentences. Okay. Next one, there are healthy foods and foods that are not. Some foods that are not are fast food. It has the advantage of being very simple and delicious, but it can be obese with high calories. Okay, there are foods. Okay, I'm gonna rewrite this. So here's what I'm gonna do instead. I'm gonna use a some while. Some foods are healthy, while other foods are not. Okay, and then so that takes care of this first sentence, right? That's done. And now this one, we're given an example, right? Some foods that are not are fast food. So I'll say one example of, or for example, let's say, for example, fast food is not healthy, right? And then I'm going to keep, it has the advantage. Okay, I like that. It has the advantage of being very simple and delicious. So we'll keep that. Well, if I can spell it. Delicious. But it can, okay, so people are obese, but food is not obese. However, food can cause obesity in people. So we need to rework this part here. But it can, and also high calories, right? So it has the advantage of being very simple and delicious, but and the phrase here, it is high in calories and can lead to obesity. So it here, fast food, is high in calories, meaning it has a lot of calories and can lead to obesity. So eating too much can lead to obesity. Okay, so I will do that. So you can use this for other purposes. So smoking can lead to like lung cancer, right? Or drinking too much can lead to liver problems. So it can lead to, this is like saying can cause, right? Can cause this. So doing A can cause B to happen. Lots of different examples you could use there. Okay. In particular, so this one's a little bit of a long, like a short paragraph here. In particular, when the Pyeongchang Olympic short track women's 3,000 meter relay, it shows how great, okay, the women's player, okay. So we're giving an example of how great Korean short track technology is. So when the relay team did what? When they what? We have a when clause here, so we need to say, we don't have a verb yet though. When this whole sentence here, or this whole phrase, is just a noun, long noun phrase. When the Pyeongchang Olympic short track women's 3,000 meter relay team what? Competed. How about that? The team showed how great Korean short track technology is. Now it's good. And then it says the women's player. Okay, so we don't know who she is yet, so we can't say the. We'll have to change it to a Korean short track. We don't call them players, we call them skaters. Short track skater collapsed in the early stages of the race, but who? The team eventually took first place. I remember that. Actually. That was really exciting. So the reason I changed it to so a Korean women's short track skater collapsed but you could say they, but because you're talking about the team, and so for a team it's made up of many people, so we could say they. But because we have the team, talking about a team, but we also have one player, one skater, that gets a little confusing. So that's why I actually wrote out the team again. Okay, that's why I did it that way. So in particular, when the Pyeongchang Olympic short track women's 3,000 meter relay team competed, they showed how great Korean short track technology is. A Korean you know what? We already know we're talking about women, and we already know we're talking about short track. And so we can make this even simpler. One of the skaters collapsed early in a race. We're talking about the race, right? Because we already know what race we're talking about in the race, but the team eventually took first place. Good. I love it. Okay, last one. I can't forget that moment, maybe because it's the first Olympic game I see in the stadium. So we got a couple of things here. One of them is tense. This already happened, right? So we can't say see. And the other thing is just a little bit of an awkwardness. In Korean, you say can't forget. In English, that sounds a little strange. We'll say, I'll never forget. I will never forget. That's how you say that. So I'll never forget that moment. That's fine. And we can take out the maybe. I mean, I think we know the reason. So because it, and now this moment is the past. It already happened, right? So we want to make sure that we're using past tense here. I'll never forget that moment because it was okay, the first time I ever, and then here we need past, saw an Olympic, let's say event. We call each thing at the Olympics, we call them events. An Olympic event. And then the writer said in the stadium here, but I think the meaning here is not just in the stadium, but usually where do you watch the Olympics? On TV, right? It's not often that you can go to the Olympics. So what this person is saying, like, I was there watching. It was my first time inside actually watching. And the way you can communicate that is to say in person. I was there in person myself, not on TV, but I actually went to the stadium, sat down, and watched the event. So I'll never forget that moment because it was the first time I ever saw an Olympic event in person. In person. What is this saying here? I don't like that. It was the first time I ever saw. And actually, that's okay. To be a little bit more grammatical, most native speakers would probably say it like this. But to be a little more grammatically correct, you could also say, it was the first time I had ever seen an Olympic event in person. Both of these are okay. This one is probably how most people would say it. Okay. So that gives us some writing feedback for weeks, actually just 4 and 5. Weeks 4 and 5. Next week, I'll do some more from maybe week 6, 7, and 8. And by the end of the semester, we'll have all of them there. For your comment on this video, please choose, again, three changes that I made here as models, and make some small changes to it to make it your own sentence. For example, here's just an example. Like I could write this in my comment. I'll never forget what, right? This is what I'm gonna forget, that moment, forget my first, my trip to Europe. Okay, why? Because it, right? It was my first time in an airplane. It was my first time flying. So there's one example. That could be an example. I'll never forget. Okay, then what was the thing that you'll never forget? And then because and why. What happened there? So there's another example. And so you need to pick 3 of these. You could use like at risk of, like another example, people who smoke a lot are at risk of getting a lung cancer, for example. Here's another example. Lead to, you could do something with this one, like not doing your homework can lead to failing class. Or not doing your homework can lead to failure, right? So pick 3 and post them as your comment. And for Canvas homework, I'm going to give you one more thing for Canvas homework. 1 second. Let me grab our book. For this one, we're going to go to the previous unit, and I'll give you another Let's see here, 1 second. Where are we at here? 1 second. Why don't we do another opinion paragraph? This one here. Here's a writing prompt for you. In many places, the minimum age necessary to get a driver's license is 16 or 17. Many people say this should be increased to 21. In your opinion, what minimum age should be required to get a driver's license? So this is on page 176. It's from Unit 9. This is just extra writing practice for you, and this will be the second paragraph that you write for this unit for this week 12. Writing practice 14 is, I believe, is the name of it. Okay, that is on Canvas. So be sure to check back in your book on this page if you don't remember exactly what you're supposed to do. And I look forward to reading your paragraphs. Next week, we're going to move into talking about how to put paragraphs together to write a longer piece of writing, to write an essay. All right. If you have any questions, as always, please send me a message. And I look forward to reading your paragraphs and seeing you next time. Take care.